I didn't know anything about Seton Hall Prep at all. I didn't know anything about it.
Wait a minute. You went to Seton Hall Prep never playing football?
Yes, never played football.
Oh,
Never played football. I truly am what you would call a diamond in the rough. Nobody knew about me. I didn't know about Seton Hall.
this is gonna hurt.
It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Talent can be a dual-edged sword that could cut deep from multiple angles. The level of expectation for failure and success is a very narrow margin. Play great, and it may not be good enough. Play great, and some would say you fail. The pressure of expectation destroys more than it motivates. Not every person is cut out to handle the weight of their gifts, judging themselves on what they should be accomplishing and not what they're doing. The definition of failure is falling below expectations. Conversely, the definition of success is exceeding those same expectations. The common thread is defining your understanding of expectations. I'm Kevin Donaldson, here with Mike Failace, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do, and that's the stories we like to highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, and don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notified about all our new content, and follow us on social media. That way you can keep up to date on the things that we do. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome Tony Woods to discuss the suffering of a first-round draft pick. Tony has been where very few people have gone, but every kid who puts on a helmet and pads wants to be. Tony, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You know, Kev, I got to say, this is like a proud moment for me. Tony and I went to high school together, and to see him become a professional football player, I'm sure it was his dream come true, but I was always too slow, too short, and too white. But Tony lived my dream.
You know, I played with a guy who came close. He got recruited, went to Penn State, played for Penn State, and I always thought if there was anybody, he was going to be the guy. And I was always just like, you root for him because you want to be. You live vicariously through your friends. Correct. And I'm assuming that's the type of relationship that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, we'll get into it later, but one day when Tony played in Giant Stadium, you know, we got down by the players' parking lot, and we were like, Tony. And he turns around, and I was just like, you know, it was like we were back in high school together. You know, it was really cool to see something like that.
You just built his ego up. On that day, everybody's looking at him like, how the fuck do you know Tony?
I mean, if I was dating a girl, I was probably going to go home and get some that night. Oh, you know a football player?
We do have to throw a shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, but we do trust Toyota of Hackensack. So if you're looking for a car, go to toyotahackensack.com. Let them find you a car. Now, Tony, each week we take a question from our audience. This one comes from Angel Baby. And I pulled this one specifically for you because obviously you're a sports guy. You know, you live and breathe. Even to this day, I've read enough about you where you live and breathe sports. What is your fondest sports memory?
Well, actually, people will probably think it would be something from the NFL, but it's actually in high school when we won our state championship my junior year. We ended up going 11-0. And we beat our rivalry, which is Bergen Catholic. I'm sure everybody knows about Bergen Catholic, but
20-12.
There it is. That's the score. It was 20-12, and that was.
Do you remember it much? 20-12. It was 40 years ago.
20-12, and it was like a revenge game because we lost to them in the Meadowlands at the time, which was Giant Stadium, my sophomore year. I believe it was 12-0. And then we ended up playing them again my junior year, and we won. We beat them 20-12.
We beat them twice that year.
Yes.
We beat them 20-18 during the regular season, I believe it was, and 20-12 in the championship game.
You know, it shows a lot about a team when they can lose one game that they play with them and come back and overcome and beat that, because a lot of times that first loss becomes a mental loss more than a physical loss.
Correct.
And was that something that made it a little bit more satisfying to you?
Definitely. We respected them. They respected us. It really was a coin flip. Just one play here, one play there was going to decide the game. The coaches were rivalries against each other, so it made the game bigger than it really was. But it was a physical, tough football game.
Like you said, we respected them; they respected us.
Correct.
But we also hated them, and they hated us.
Correct. Absolutely.
I mean, it was a knockdown, drag out.
Yes.
You know, every time we played.
Was he on the sidelines?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was yeah.
No, not playing. He was on the sidelines nursing his hurt ankle.
No,
Mike,
when we won the championship, it was his junior year, my sophomore year.
okay.
I was hanging out by the cheerleaders in my uniform.
Mike, what do you think?
You know, like I said, I mean, I played sports my whole life, and you know, I was always one of the smaller people on the field, and I was an athlete, but I wasn't that great. After I went to college for a year, I wound up playing semi-pro football for about 4 or 5 years. And I'll never forget, we were playing the New Jersey Oaks, which was one of our big rivals. And I was playing corner. And one of their big wide receivers comes out on the first play. He looks at me and goes, it just gives me that like chuckle. I was in his face all day. All day. I was smashing him on the line of scrimmage. I mean, I wound up having like 2 interceptions. I had a fumble recovery. This guy only had like 2 receptions. After the game, he sought me out. And he goes, "You shut me down today." And that was just like
A lot of respect.
that was like my feel good moment. You know, then I sucked after that. I want to leave it.
I got 2 of them. So when I played college ball, I was a big fan of growing up. I was a big fan of Conrad Dobler and the way he played.
Awesome.
Okay, so Conrad Dobler, and I learned this. I forget what video I was watching, but I used to go into the guys and I would pinch their nipple. I'd get under their pads. I was a lineman, you know. Pinch their nipple. I'd jab them in the ribs or something. Really get them pissed off. And after about 3 or 4 plays, I'd just walk past the ref. I'd make sure I didn't turn my head. I say, "Hey, keep an eye on number 65 here. He's getting a little dirty." And sure enough, man, that guy would come back at me. But my most precious moment it happened recently. You know, my oldest and guy he lives, breathes, and eats football, and he's been to a couple Jets games. I got some friends who are on the Jets. But my youngest guy was able to get 3 tickets this year, and it was his first football game, my 10-year-old. And that, I don't know if you guys remember that. Do you remember the first time you walked into a pro stadium and you come out of the tunnel and you see the field for the first time? You know, capture that.
And even the stadium it goes up forever. You know,
capture that in a bottle, and you have true magic. And I looked for it in my 10-year-old's face. Like I was waiting for that moment. He came in, the eyes got so wide, and he was just amazed by everything. But then we went out and then I'm talking to him, and I said, "How big's that field?" And he goes, "I don't know, it looks like the same as our field." And I said, "That field's 100 yards. How big's your field at your home field?" He goes, "It's 100 yards. Right. I said, "Those guys look at it the same way. While you are amazed at all this fanfare and stuff like that, but that amazement in his eyes," and even my oldest, he did the same thing. First Jets game I took him to. The amazement in their eyes, you can never duplicate it. You can never replicate it. There is no drug in the world that could give me that high that I got looking at my boys first time they go into a pro stadium.
I agree totally. That's the same thing happened to me in the 70s, going to Yankee Stadium. Yeah, just seeing it for the first time, my eyes were, because I played more baseball growing up than anything.
You got to see Thurman Munson.
That was my favorite player.
Yeah,
Thurman Munson was my favorite player.
Hey, next week, I mean, he died August 2nd, I think, 1979. So that's next week.
Lesson of the day,
next week.
Don't try to fly your own airplane.
Yeah, okay.
And Angel, baby, thank you so much for sending that one in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. Now, you're in a little bit of an anomaly. What I know about you comes from Mike. Okay. I tried to do my research on you, but your Wikipedia page is wrong.
I tried to say nice things about you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem, man. You're a lot bigger than me.
It was like 2 nice, 1 not so nice.
Right.
You know, he did his work, but your Wikipedia page is wrong, and we got to contact Wikipedia and say you are the original Tony Woods.
Correct.
Yeah,
they do have a guy that used to play in the USFL. I'm not sure if he was older than me or not, but I never played in the USFL.
Yeah, that's the only one that I know. Well, actually, a lot of players started their careers in the USFL. Correct. The only one I know is New Jersey Generals. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you any other USFL team.
Right.
We had the Philadelphia Stars. You had
Philadelphia Stars. The
New Orleans Breakers.
Right. That's pretty good.
I mean, they brought Jim Kelly originally
Birmingham
signed
Stallions.
Doug Flutie, Jim Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reggie White.
Herschel Walker.
Reggie White, all those guys.
Reggie White
Yeah.
started. See, I didn't know Reggie White.
Yep.
He was one of my favorites because I'm an Eagles fan. So
Yes.
He doesn't know football, Tony. He's an Eagles fan.
So since your Wikipedia page is so screwed up, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? Obviously, you are our first round draft pick. That I'm going to give away.
Let's set the record straight. You tell us about yourself. We'll go on your Wikipedia and cross everything off.
All right, well, I don't know where it starts, but
Where'd you grow up?
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, born and raised.
Newark, New Jersey in the 60s was a little bit of a different place than it is now.
Yes, I just missed the riots because I was born in 65. No, excuse me, I think the riots were 67, so I was too young to understand and see what was going on. But even though Newark has its reputation of being a aggressive city, some good, some bad, where I grew up at was somewhat middle class, believe it or not. We had the house where everybody came. My father,
You know your mother designed it that way. I don't know.
Really?
I'm going to tell you your mother designed it that way because my wife does the same thing. She wants
Keep the kids home.
That's it. She wants to make the house the meeting place so she can keep an eye on you, but also give you a place to be a kid.
Well, that was a tip. Well, that's a great tip because that's exactly what happened. We had the house on the corner, brick house. We had the basketball court. My father and my brothers, we helped build the indoor pool, an underground pool outside. We had the jukebox. We had the house where all the kids came. So, my mother would feed the kids left and right, and it was a good time. So even though it was a lot of outside noise, and obviously you always can find crime and things to do, but we were that house on the corner where everybody came to have fun.
We had this conversation just before about inner city, before we went on air, and because kids don't have places to play now.
Correct.
They're shutting down playgrounds. They're shutting down,
Or their parents are afraid to send them to playgrounds because there's violence happening all around
exactly.
them.
Correct.
So if you have that safe home to go to,
Right.
kudos to your parents. That's a great job by them.
And everybody, we stayed outside. Whether girls playing jump rope, guys, playing basketball.
We didn't have video games.
No video games.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we didn't do
Atari
that.
was
Atari,
just getting started at that time. Correct.
Was sports a part of your upbringing? Did your parents instill it in you, or did you just find it on your own?
We really found it on my own because my brother and I, who were the athletes in the family, we always used to watch TV. My brother was more outdoors guy. I was somebody who kind of liked to study the game. So I used to watch all, the college football. Football ended up being my favorite sport. Pittsburgh Steelers was my favorite team because back in the 70s, all you saw was Dallas, Steelers, Miami Dolphins, 49ers, those type of teams. And I guess the black and gold just stuck with me.
Jack Lambert fan?
Absolutely.
The Steelers
my favorite player.
The Steelers were the team of the 70s.
Correct.
So, growing up in that age,
Born in the 60s, but raised in the 70s.
And if anybody ever questions that, just what was that Burt Reynolds movie, Stroke or Ace? I think it was, where Terry Bradshaw's in there and Burt Reynolds hauls off and punches Terry Bradshaw in the mouth in the movie. And Terry Bradshaw comes back and spits his tooth at Burt Reynolds, and then it's game on. So that's how big the Pittsburgh Steelers were in the 70s, that they were actually movie stars also.
Yes.
Dallas didn't have that.
No, Dallas didn't have that. Dallas, they had the star on their helmet.
Yeah.
and it had the shiny pants, so all the girls
and nice
the Cowboys.
cheerleaders.
And had the cheerleaders. They did have the cheerleaders. But yeah, I became a Steeler fan. But I was a person that studied the game. And once I saw, whatever happened on TV, then we running outside to try to practice it in the playground or in the park and those type of things.
Now, were you always like one of the bigger kids growing up, or were you a late bloomer?
Always. I was always one of the tallest, but I was young. I looked older than what I actually was. So I actually got better because I played against kids in high school. They, knocked us around. That's the way I always felt like you got better when you played against older guys. And they really, they was physical with you. They was, whether it was playing basketball or football. So that's kind of how I grew up.
So I grew up learning how to play basketball in the inner city, right? So I played basketball a little bit different than a suburban kid because I had to be a little bit tougher. I was one of the only white guys playing, and if you cried, that's what they wanted.
Correct.
No, you're not getting it out of me. But it taught me how to be so much better. Unfortunately, I try to teach my kids that. I think I might need to bring them down to like Newark or Patterson, have them play with some guys who really play some baskgoing and just to toughen them up a little bit. But you take an elbow in the mouth and you better shut up.
That's just how it was back then.
Yeah.
If you're gonna cry, you're gonna lose.
Oh yeah,
they're gonna smell that weakness and you're done.
But here's the cool thing. Here's the cool thing. If you showed that you had some heart and showed that you were a little tough,
Right.
the respect was earned relatively quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really was.
You got acceptance.
Yeah, and that's what I think everybody was fighting for. So those older kids, did they give you a little guff? Did they accept you? Or did they give you a little hard time?
Yeah, they accepted me. You know, like I said, they knew I was young, but I still had a big body. I had a teenage body at a very young age. So they really, respected that I was blessed with pretty good speed to be my size and quickness and, big hands and all those type of things that athletes, today or possess. And I had that at that time. And then I think they started really being impressed with the mental game when I started understanding, because like I said, I used to watch TV, I used to read the books and then go outside and try to practice it.
Now, when did the coaches, because we had talked off air that there wasn't any junior league football at the time.
Right.
When did the coaches start, how did you get involved in football if there's no junior league? It's just going outside playing street ball, but eventually you had to get into some organized game.
Right. Well, my mother didn't want me to go to one of the city schools. So I didn't know anything about Seton Hall Prep at all. I didn't know anything about it.
Wait a minute. You went to Seton Hall Prep never playing football?
Yes, never played football.
Oh,
never played football. I truly am what you would call a diamond in the rough. Nobody knew about me. I didn't know about Seton Hall. The running joke is I used to play, when I was 13, I was playing in the baseball league. And, we were talking about what high school we was going to go to. And once I realized I was going to Seton Hall, I was sitting there. It was the baseball team. We was talking. I was like, I can't wait to see all the girls and da-da-da-da. And they were laughing at me. I'm like, what are you guys laughing for? Like, Tone, Seton Hall is an all-boys school. I had no clue. Yeah. It's a true story. I had no clue.
Why do you think Mike went there?
The only girls we saw were when we were changing classes and the college girls would walk
Correct.
by.
Yeah. We happened to be right in the middle of Seton Hall University when we went there. But, the first freshman practice, we were running around, and Coach Cal Cagno, he said,
Cal.
it was Al Cal. And then he said, he said, what position you want to play? I think I said linebacker. He said, you ever played defensive end? I said, no. He said, well, you are now. And that's kind of how it started.
Isn't that funny that the position finds you?
Yes.
I'm worried about that with certain kids. Like my kid in general, he's grown so fast, and he's always been a lineman because of his size. He's always been at the top tier of the weight. Right. But he's more built like a D end.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to change when he gets into high school, and I don't ever want him to get pigeonholed. Did you ever feel pigeonholed just getting put at the end?
Well, no, I actually didn't, because as we talked about, Jack Lambert was my favorite player, but he was an inside guy. My body type wasn't set for it being inside linebacker. You usually be a little shorter, a little stouter.
You're more rangy.
I'm more rangy. So being on the outside, whether outside linebacker, depending on if we run a 3-4 defense, or just a stand-up defensive end, which we end up playing at Seton Hall, that was the perfect position for me.
5'2" monster.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, there inevitably comes a point in every person's football career when you take a shot and you wake up. Most kids have it happen in junior league football. You didn't play that. You get on the field in high school, and all of a sudden you take a pop for the first time. Was it yes or uh-oh?
Well, actually, my first pop that really woke me up was playing street ball against the older guys. And they running certain plays, and like a guard is pulling, and I don't know how to put my head on a swivel yet. So he ear holes me and knocks me into a tree. So those type of things, that's kind of where I started growing up. High school, seriously, really was, I don't want to say easy, but I didn't have many problems in high school but when I got to college, that's when it started. You started seeing
but
that.
But you see, like Tony, on offense, if I'm not mistaken, they switched you around. I think
yes.
Your junior year, I think you were a tackle.
They moved me to offensive tackles. We had to play both ways.
And then senior year, they moved you to tight end.
Correct. That's correct.
But did it give you a little perspective on what you wanted to do? Like, at what point did this want to say, you know what, I want to go further with this stuff? And I think playing both sides of the line gives you a little bit more perspective where you can specialize in really what your love is.
Well, I always loved defense. And like I said, we go back to the Steelers, even though, you had the Bradshaw and the Swans, but the steel curtain was the thing. And I just gravitated to defense.
See, I was always a Mean Joe Green guy. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. He's the anchor.
I was offense all day long.
LC Greenwood, Joe Green.
All of them.
I was waiting to get a jersey thrown at me, or LC Greenwood, even that to crush the can. Sincerely, LC Greenwood.
He went to Steelers games carrying a Coke with him, just in case he ran into me and Joe Green.
Yes, I always was a defensive player. But I know in high school, I always said if you was worth your salt, you had to play on both sides of the line of scrimmage, because we didn't have as many kids as they have now. They got like 100 people on the team now. I don't even know how many we had back then, but we had to play on both sides. But
especially somebody like you, you're gonna play both ways. It's just.
But if you remember, the freshman team, they only had a certain amount because they only had a certain amount of jerseys.
That was definitely a different time. Oh my God.
They had like 30 jerseys, and they only kept like 30 guys because they had no more jerseys back then.
Now, your parents in Newark, they want to give their son a better education,
right?
And I'm assuming you went to Seton Hall for the education reasons, not so much for the football.
Correct.
What was the cost? I mean, you're talking ancient times, so it was probably what, $50 a year?
No. It was actually, I want to say it was like $1,200. It went up $200 every year.
Yeah, I think it was like I vaguely remember like $1,200, $1,400,
16
like
between $1,600, $1,800. We were out.
But that was a decent amount of money.
But
yes,
I remember back in the day, Del Barton was like $5,000.
Yes.
Like, $5,000 for high school.
Did it ever put a financial strain on your parents?
Well, my father had a house cleaning service where he had 30 employees working for him, where they would have 7 station wagons with 4 people to a car, and they would go out to different households and had the crew, cleaning up the house, bathrooms, beds, vacuuming floors, all that. So he had a really successful business in the 70s. So, me being young and not recognizing it until I got older, that I was very blessed that he was able to do that. And I would be able to ride with them, because he actually had his place in Orange, which was not too far from South Orange. So it made everything work well for me.
The last thing to mature in any kid is the lack of selfishness, because kids are inherently selfish. It's not their fault. It's the way they're born, and you don't see the sacrifices that your parents make in order to make your life better.
Yes,
a lot of times, and it sounds like your parents were all in on you.
They were all in on all of us, really.
How many kids you grew up with?
I had 2. I had an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay,
Darryl.
And my brother Darryl, he actually played with me.
At Pitt also, right?
Yeah, he went to Pitt also. Played at Seton Hall for a couple years, and he finished up at Elizabeth High School. And then we played together at Pitt, so it was a great thing.
Oh, you got to play with your brother.
Yeah, that was big.
Your brother was a great athlete too.
Yeah. Besides, if he didn't get hurt, he would have made the NFL also.
So I'm imagining you're getting recruited by everybody down the line. You're this standout player at Seton Hall Prep and
All-American.
Now the pressure starts hitting.